Sarah, I'm so happy that we got together here at Somerset Edison, for the trade show. Um, we were just talking about Lefty before we, turned everything on, and I'm going to jump ahead because we're going to go all over the place. But I remember when I called you to see if you'd be willing to do this, we were talking about Lefty, and you said, without Lefty, there'd be no Sarah.
Absolutely.
So tell me about the story behind that.
Well, Lefty, it really is a pre-Lefty and a post-Lefty. I was working at a tackle store full-time, and I was kind of at a loss. I had a great degree in graphic design and illustration, and I had been using it, but I was really unhappy with working in an office like that. And I'd already been hunting and fishing and spending a lot of time and money in a local tackle store, and finally asked for a job, got it, and then found myself without got fired from the graphic design world. And I think I was struggling for a while trying to figure out, okay, well, what's my next step? And was at an early fly fishing show, an early Chuck Frimsky show.
Here in Somerset, Jersey?
Not in Somerset, but actually in Maryland. It's a show that they no longer have. And my name, I gave my name to an editor of a saltwater fly fishing magazine, who said somebody was looking for women who might be interested in writing. And I thought, oh, great, this is like really a come on. And
a different sort of a
so I thought, I just didn't think anything about it. And just a couple weeks later, he called. And Lefty called my house at night at about, I don't know, 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. I'm like, which one of my friends is playing a joke on me? And I was pretty cagey. I just thought nothing. I was like, great. But I, promised to call him back the next day with my work schedule so that we could get together. And sure enough, when I called him back and he answered the phone, I thought, oh my God, this is it. And he gave me, just told me that the industry was looking for women and would I be willing to write? And I thought, well, good grief, this is Lefty Kreh, and I can't spell for shit, but I can't lose out on this opportunity. And I think within a week I was up there writing an article, and because I had a degree in art and a lot of photography background, I could take photos for my articles. And he just came up with ideas. I wrote the ideas. I did the articles. I took them back to him. He red-penned them mercilessly, and I still have all the hard copies of all the articles I ever wrote. And then we sent them out, and they were accepted, and pretty quickly I had a couple of columns that were one was weekly, one was monthly, and then writing a lot of freelance articles. And sadly, most of those magazines aren't in print anymore. They're gone, and so the ability to write kind of sort of went away for a while. And now there's a lot of writing you can do on social media. But that's how I met him, and he took me. I got to go to the Bahamas with him, catch my first bonefish with him, and I fished all over the Mid-Atlantic with him. And I got to meet other people like Bob Clauser, and it's how I met Bob Popovics and a lot of those. It's how I met Brian.
You hang out with Lefty, you're going to meet some big people.
Yeah.
Including Brian, your husband, who's sitting over here in the corner.
Absolutely. So it was, he I think he really recognized underdogs, people that maybe had the talent but were shy or just didn't maybe have the right opportunities. And he just took me, and sometimes he had to push me to get me there, to get over that hump of fear and shy. And I did it. I gutted it out. I think sometimes I did it on his belief more than I did on my own. But here I am, more than almost 30 years plus since meeting Lefty. But I think for a while there, it was, a lot of his
influence.
And he was a huge proponent of women in the outdoors and fly fishing.
Absolutely, from the get-go. And we have a lot to thank.
Well, let me ask you, what tackle store were you working in when all of a sudden Lefty called and wanted you to start right?
I was working at Angler's Sports Center in Annapolis, which is a really big store. It's been there for a long time. There are a couple of stores in Maryland that have been around forever.
And what were you doing there?
I was salesperson on the floor.
So what kind of background did you have in fishing at that time for you to become a writer?
To become a writer, so I grew up fishing in the backyard, and then when I chose my boyfriends accordingly. but
Smart woman.
Exactly. But when I worked at Anglers, we literally sat on the Chesapeake Bay. So I was fishing and fly fishing in saltwater, since my late teens, early 20s. And then fishing, Maryland has great trout fishing and smallmouth fishing and warmouth fishing for largemouth bass. So I had a great great opportunity close by for everything right out of the gate. And Anglers sold it all, and they were very generous about selling to their employees. So I had a pretty big tab always. But it was just, and I had access to a lot of expertise. I mean, not just Lefty, but the people that I worked with, I think, saw somebody who really loved it and just, gave me the information and scolded me when I was doing wrong, too. I mean,
what kind of things were you doing wrong to be scolded?
Just, maybe not rigging something properly, that kind of thing. Or, maybe pushing the rule boundaries, maybe that kind of thing. Just
what kind of rules would you break?
Just like,
my God. That's a red flag right there. I want to know what law did you break?
Well, just kind of maybe hunting on days maybe you shouldn't, didn't do it, but would, talk to people who were doing it when kind of tempted and just not. And also too, just saying, look, you're going to have to play it straight because you're in front of a lot of people when you're working at this tackle store. Mm-hmm. You don't want to mess up. Mm-hmm. So,
who got you into fishing? Your mom, your dad, friends?
I think I actually had my grandfather was great, and I had uncles that were fantastic. I had three uncles that I absolutely hero worshipped, and they all fished. But
your dad did not fish.
He didn't, but he was so good about keeping me supplied with what I needed and knowing, I mean, we literally had fishing in our backyard, so I think he knew that I was safe. Mm-hmm. And if I needed something, he would buy it for me. And I had a lot of the neighborhood kids were good. We hunted as a herd. Right. So, or fished as a herd. And so pretty much always safe.
Well, I want to get into the hunting part a little bit later because you're such a great outdoors person. When Nikki posted earlier this year, who would you like to have on the podcast? We're talking about women in fishing. And your name was so prevalent.
Oh, 90%.
Sarah Gardner. And here you are.
Awesome.
How does that make you feel knowing that the industry and your name stands right there at the top as far as female, fly fishermen at this point?
It's very humbling, a little frightening, and I feel the pressure a little bit of being a role model, but I think too it's kind of maybe a testament to longevity.
Right.
But yeah,
for sure, you got to have a lot of time under your backside.
Right.
Were you influenced by any other women, or even men?
Oh, always.
In fishing.
Always.
Who were they?
So in fly fishing, I mean, to make a long story short, we've always had Juliana Barners. Whether now there's a theory that she may not have been a real human being, but she was the OG fly fishing woman back in the Renaissance. But Kathy Back was ahead of me and very closely associated with Lefty. So I heard her name a lot, and she was in print a lot. So I had good people to look for. We had Lorianne Murphy. We had Joan Wolfe, of course. Sure. So there were always women out there. Mm-hmm. And then also in the hunting world, we had Jean Craighead George and some other gal. And again, Dame Juliana Barners was a hunter and a falconer too. So I've always had women, and I've never felt I've never felt alone out there, and I've never felt like I was doing anything that was, I would say, pioneering. I've always had women to look to, and I've always had women not just to look up to, but to look. I mean, I've had a lot of contemporaries too. There are a lot of women in my age range that are doing it and have been doing it, and it's been really cool to look back and to see the young women that are coming in at a much higher level of skill level than I had when I was coming into the sport, and a lot of passion and drive. And so I think that, you know, I'm excited. I think that women are in it.
I think that over time, fishing became cool, if I'm not mistaken. So if it's not cool, there might not be an interest to be on a river or on a lake or on the ocean, grabbing slimy things. I'm just talking about generically speaking, because I know my girlfriend would never want to grab a fish.
Right.
Well, I think too, it was always like something your grandfather did. So it was like a sport that old people did, and it wasn't appealing to like
young.
Yeah, it wasn't appealing to teenagers. But yeah, at some point it did get cool.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the fact that you can go outside and connect with nature in a way that, is very unique, I think that's an interesting thought, though. It wasn't cool for some time.
Right.
Well, I think also, if I'm not mistaken, the internet and all the videos that are being posted over the last, I don't know how many years, gave people a real inside look at all these great places to fish and the great fish to be caught.
Right.
And all of a sudden, you want to be there. And even if you don't really have the money to get there, you live in your dreams about catching something bigger. I remember, and I've told this story a number of times, growing up in Aspen, I only knew the trout in the rowing fork and the frying pan, but I was always watching Flip Pallet on Saturday morning, and I wanted to be in his boat. So that was before the internet, but with that fishing show, that brought me, along with many, many millions, to the game. And I think now with the internet, you can just get on your computer and see some amazing, videos. Just when I asked you who else should we interview here in Jersey, you said, well, maybe Rachel Finn. And I looked at her movie. My God, what a great testament to the will of the human spirit. You lose your spouse and you have a whole life in fishing. And you've had that, but not all women are tough. I understand you are really tough. So where does that spine, where does that gumption, where does that intestinal fortitude come from?
That is a good question, because I think the love, the desire to do and see way outweighs the discomfort that it takes to get there. And whether it's immediate discomfort of the day or a bad season or cold or too hot, the love of it just overcomes that. And maybe the desire not to work at Walmart. I don't know.
I think the latter might be more inspiring than the other,
Right.
But hand in hand, yeah, you found yourself in the great outdoors.
And I love testing myself that way. Like, how much can you take? How much can you do? And that's not for everybody, but it's put me in the place of being comfortable in my surroundings as a guide, and hopefully that comfort transfers over to the people that get on my boat, the people that might be nervous or scared, or that it's their first time, or they're afraid of the unknown, and seeing my comfort, hopefully is good for them.
It's interesting. Here you are teaching men how to be tougher.
Yeah, I have a feeling
that.
you like the grind. Like when you're in your season, I don't know if your season's the summer or the fall, but you really enjoy the grind.
I love
and
the
the
grind.
toughness. Yeah.
I do.
When was the last time you cried?
Oh my God.
Have you ever cried?
Oh, I cry all the time. I cry. Oh, I'm looking at my husband because I know he's laughing, and I cry a lot. I'm a softie.
What makes you cry?
Frustration makes me cry, but
really?
also like extreme beauty or seeing somebody else accomplish something and like telling their story. Like, I'm going to cry now, but just seeing how somebody else has overcome something or really done something, and the telling of that story just like
I feel
grabs
that.
me.
Yeah, I get that because we'll be watching something sensitive on TV or
We'll
movie
watch a
or whatever.
commercial and a dog dies on a commercial, and my dad's over there weeping.
Yeah.
And Nikki goes, "Are you crying?"
Well, that's what I loved about your podcast. I'm seeing all of my heroes, and you touch on things with them that makes them cry, and I'm seeing my superheroes cracking, and I think that says something about their passion and how much they care. And
It's exactly right. When you touch the heart, it's easy to get all wrinkled up.
right, and I think the toughness. I think it's helped me get into places that I wouldn't go to either. Like when I got to guide in Alaska for 2 summers, and I loved every second of it, the hard, the fun, the easy. But I think the thing that really took me by surprise was being part of the Yupik community on the river that I worked on, and seeing what they go through on the day-to-day and how hard their life is. And that, I think,
That puts everything in perspective.
it really puts it in perspective.
You didn't even see them in the winter.
Right.
You saw them on a beautiful late fall day.
Exactly. And so I think, if that's what toughness, if being tough takes you to that, then I'm all for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope I can stay tough for a long time so I get to continue to experience that kind of thing.
What's the hardest thing you've ever done?
Oh, this podcast. No, that's a really good question. I think I would imagine, I guess training for Ironman and completing an Ironman was really, really tough, but it doesn't seem now, many, many years away from it, it doesn't seem as tough, but breaking it down into portions and training gradually made it seem less tough. I would honestly have to say probably working in Alaska was pretty tough, but it wasn't impossible. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why I loved it, because I realized that I could reach a level of toughness that it did. But I would say probably in a single day, probably catching multiple blue marlin in a single day was tough.
Mm-hmm.
Was tough, but not insurmountable. And it was kind of neat because I knew what my body could and couldn't do. And I never felt like, I'm going to, go to my knees and puke and die. And so, I don't.
You just opened a whole Pandora's box here in one sentence. Iron Man catching blue marlin, 600-pounder, 4 of them.
But it's just like you just do it. Just getting into
Have you ever had a big heartbreak?
Oh my God. Yeah, absolutely.
So what's worse, heartbreak or physical pain?
Oh, heartbreak, I think.
No doubt.
Yep.
No doubt.
So I want to go back to the Ironman. Did you do that just as like a personal test of fortitude and will and physical ability, or what came about that?
It was, it's just like having big gaps of time in the winter now. Our season's getting shorter. Our fishing season changes a little bit. So I get this gap of time, February, January, February, and March. And it's hard to find things to do. Like all the hunting seasons are closed. What else are you going to do?
Right.
And I loved, I've always been a little bit of a fitness nut. And I had friends that were doing triathlon. And so I got into it as a way to kind of be around people that weren't fishing, just being able to step away mentally. And then I noticed I had this block of time. And everybody who gets into triathlon is always pushing for the next. And
there's also a big community revolved around that, isn't that correct?
Big community.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I haven't been competing in a while, and those friends are still my friends. I think there's a process of going through that, just embracing the suck that we all kind of relate to.
Right.
But so it was a personal challenge to, I can do this. I have the time to do this in the winter, so I'm going to do this. And it's such a training for an endurance sport like that it's so not about chest thumping tough. It's about just doing the work and settling with yourself and being patient and factoring for what you can control, training for what you can control, and then being prepared for the things you can't control.
Right.
And that in that life, and isn't that like what guiding is all about? You prepare for everything, and then be willing to go with the flow.
And I'm thinking that your routine is probably the most important aspect of that whole brace and preparation.
Yeah, it's all about routine.
But it's also, too, I can't imagine that it's not about the mental war. Because the mind can be very fragile if you allow it to go there.
Right.
So you're always battling your mind. Should I stop? Should I slow down? No, you got to push harder.
Yep.
And that's what I always admire about guys like David Goggins. You know, you read his book, You Can't Hurt Me. I can't believe how tough some people are.
Yeah.
You know, the Marines and the Navy SEALs and all these guys that are, you know, traveling around the world trying to keep our country safe. But also, too, we have that same in many, many different athletes. And I've never done any of that kind of stuff, you know, considering the pain and the threshold of pushing myself really hard, other than the sports I've done. But it's never been a sport of endurance and real hard pain. And you kind of like that. You're stubborn.
I kind of like it, yeah. But, you know, it's just like what Sarah was saying. I think it's I've never done an Ironman. I don't think I'll ever will. I mean, that's amazing, unbelievable. But if you do that, then your everyday life, your everyday job, your everyday routine just becomes, if you suffer through that much pain and now you have a bad day in the water, I'm just guessing, you can cope and you can figure out what you need to do to get past that so much more easily because you just went through hell.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Does that make sense? I'm not articulating that great, but
No, it does. You know that the pain that you're feeling now does not compare.
right.
And I think the other thing it does too is that you're training in discomfort for really long periods of time, for hours. You're not, you know, you're a lot of time under tension.
Right.
And so that also translates to your boat.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is going to be a long, tough day, but we're going to get through it.
Yeah, I got this.
Right. Tell me a little bit about your husband, Brian. You know, you guys have been married a long time. You're both guides. Tell me how you met him and how you both ended up evolving into, you know, these great iconic guides.
That is a great story. I'm looking at him over there. We met through Lefty. It's a great Lefty story.
And Lefty married you guys.
He did. He married.
I heard it was a hippie wedding.
It was very much a hippie wedding, but he was actually our wedding photographer. We had a legitimate priest, and we actually had to go through marriage counseling, pre-marriage counseling.
What'd they talk about?
Oh my gosh, that Brian was the captain of the ship, and I was the maid.
And you didn't like that at all.
I did not like that much at all.
gosh.
I was like, we might have a little bit of a trouble here. But we were doing that after like being on the water for days and days and days, and we'd have to go to these counseling meetings. But so Lefty was there. He heckled us. We heckled the preacher. It was a hilarious story. He was very long-winded. It got late. Lefty was like, we got to hurry this up. So, but Lefty, when I first started working with Lefty, he was looking for job opportunities for me too. And he'd lined up an amazing job down in the Keys. I worked for World Class Outfitters
With Randy Tao.
with Randy.
Mhm.
Yeah, and but when Lefty sent me down there, he sat me down and was like, "I will not hear about you in the Lorelei, and you will not date guides, and you're going to be on the straight and narrow." And I really
Wow.
took that to heart. And when I left the Keys and came back up to Maryland and started working again at Anglers, I met Brian through
At the Lorelei.
No, thank God. Oh my God, that would have been done.
Sorry, Lefty. But it's time.
It's time.
We all got to go to the Lorelei at some point.
I've never known who his spies were down there, so I never pushed it. But I started dating Brian, and it got really serious really, really fast. And we knew immediately that we had found the right person. And Brian knew Lefty being in the business, and Lefty kind of basically Brian asked Lefty kind of for permission to marry me.
Approval.
And Lefty, first he thought it was a different guy. And he gave Brian the what for, and I didn't realize this.
A what
right,
for?
Yeah,
Why? Why do you want to marry Sarah?
This is my
obvious.
And I didn't really know about that part for a little while. That Lefty had kind of given him, you take care of her, or I'm going to take care of you.
He loved you.
Yeah, and I mean, Lefty was everything. But we got married, and it's been the fastest 25 plus years of my life, and it's not just, I mean, he's my backbone so much of the time, and I try to be his backbone, but it's not just that we love each other. I think that the way that we think about fishing is really, really the same.
So how do you guys think about fishing, being both guides in the same zip code?
Well, I think, also for a long, long time, we're the only fly fishing guide. So we're going to be thinking that way the same. But I think just like how we approach handling our clients, how we approach the day, what makes a quality fishing trip. And also too, like for some of our fisheries, we're very rarely fishing close together, or I mean, even within sight of each other, but we're paying attention to the same thing. What are the birds doing? What's the tide doing? What's the current doing? What's the time of, what are you seeing? What do you know? And I think just being in agreement on that, but then over the years, how that modifies itself, and as things change, the other person's adapting to what they're seeing. And we've never over-exaggerated or under-exaggerated to each other, so that when we get a report from the other person,
it's honest.
It's honest. And I think that goes across the board, across the day.
Are you and Brian competitive with each other?
No, absolutely not. We
never been.
Very little. Like, we may have clients, we may fish like a joint trip where the clients are family members or friends, and they'll be competitive, but we learned really early on that is just not a good combination.
Right. Do you share information
with each other?
Yeah.
Oh, like implicitly, like all the time.
Can you imagine if they didn't?
Oh,
yeah. Well, I can only imagine though. Like, I'm going to go here. Well, I'm going to go here.
Right.
And I can only imagine that, she's going to go there, but the fishing is really good there. And he shows up where you want to fish before you do. That's never happened.
It doesn't happen very often.
That's why you've been married for 25 years.
Exactly. And I'm trying to think too, what we've noticed too is like a lot of times there are certain times of the year where there just maybe not a lot of other guides out. So it's so important to spread your eyes out. And so if we were fishing in the same place, we might be missing something. Or so much of the time in the morning, we make very much a point of not fishing near each other so that we can figure it out.
So smart. I remember we were shell fishing in Golfito, Guatemala, and the biomass, nobody could find the biomass. So the fleet would go all over, a difference of maybe 150 miles. And they'd find the biomass, and everybody could go catch fish the next day. And that's a classic example of what you guys were doing.
Exactly.
Sarah, I was just going to say, for the people that don't know you and your husband, can you give them just a broad view on where you guide, what you fish for, kind of all that stuff, just in case people are interested and they want to book a trip?
Sure. So we live and fish in coastal North Carolina, and we have two places that we fish out of. In the spring and summer season, we're fishing out of Oregon Inlet, North Carolina, which is in the Kitty Hawk. People recognize Kitty Hawk and Nag's Head, especially Kitty Hawk from the Wright brothers. Oregon Inlet is legendary for its bill fishing and yellowfin tuna, but we fish inshore, and we're fishing back in the Sound for speckled trout and bluefish, striped bass, flounder, puppy drum, that kind of thing. And then we also fish the ocean side, and we'll chum for sharks and look for cobia. And, when we're chumming for sharks, a lot of times we'll find other things like dolphin, we'll get the cobia in the chum slicks too. So a lot of cool variety up off of Oregon Inlet. And I know I'm missing a lot. That's like really going
false
quickly.
albacore.
We do get false albacore up there towards the end of the season, but what we do is in September, end of September, early October, we migrate. We take our boats down to the Morehead City area, to Harker's Island, and we fish out of Beaufort Inlet and Barden's Inlet, and that's really targeting albies.
Okay.
And on top, and we're also fishing for bluefish, Spanish mackerel, and we have some really good old red drum fishing. We're talking large spawning redfish that
40
could be,
pounds?
Yeah.
Wow.
That like just whopping.
Is it all
huge
sight
fish.
fishing for them?
Yeah. Well, for the redfish, a lot of times it is. For everything else, yes. For the redfish, we've learned how to mark them, and we can even get flies down 40, 50 feet down to these fish
Oh,
when we
interesting.
see the marks.
Yeah, because we used to fish Louisiana. Have you
Right.
fished there?
I haven't. Brian has.
Oh my God! 40-pound redfish and this much water.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the big difference between Louisiana and what we have. We have a lot of great big reds, but it's not the shallow water fishing for them. We get them in deeper water.
Well, Brian was telling me that the world record is like 90 pounds.
Yeah.
You've caught 60-pound redfish.
Caught some big ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. And they're doing really well. They seem to be, it's one of those things that has every fishery in North Carolina, every fishery is cyclical. And so as we see some fish kind of disappear for whatever reason, other fish are coming on strong, and it seems like the redfish are doing really well in our state.
What kind of sharks are you chumming up?
We chum a lot of black tips, a lot of spinner sharks, and they're
They're great, aren't they?
Yes.
That's my
We've
dad's
got-
favorite.
Oh my
Fun.
God, they are
Oh,
the
yeah.
best.
And it's at your feet, so you can see everything. And how cool is it, especially in the summertime? One thing that's really different about our two fisheries is that our fall fishery tends to be our repeat people, our people that have some experience. Our summertime fishery we are in the heart of vacation country. So we get a lot of family groups, a lot of kids, a lot of grandmas, a lot of grandpas, a lot of first timers. So to take them out and catch them a black tip shark or have them catch a black tip
Yes.
is like, earth shattering.
Right.
Really, really cool.
And what boat do you run? You run a Jones Brothers?
I do. I run a 23 Jones Brothers Cape Fisherman light tackle, and it's one of, I've run several Jones Brothers now. There's a great boat built for our part of the world. Super simple, easy to take care of.
And you have a tower so you can cruise and
You do?
I
see
do. I have a
awesome.
Cobia tower. I have one, and Brian does not.
Oh, really? What's up with that, bro?
And it's really cool. I mean, it really changes your perspective on everything. But it's interesting. Our Cobia season has really changed a lot, so I don't use it as much as I used to. And it's really weird too. I spent the first 18 years guiding shoulder to shoulder with my clients, and when you get up in that tower, you're only a few 5-10 feet above them, and it just changes everything. I can't gauge the mood of my people. It's harder to communicate.
Oh, interesting.
And so I really felt like I wasn't kind of knowing how are my people doing?
You were a little disconnected up
I
there.
felt disconnected
Yeah.
up there.
So do you run that? Once you get to your spot, can you get down to the bottom,
Yeah.
up to the bow,
Yeah.
and fish with them?
I can, yeah.
So
absolutely.
you have the best of both worlds.
I do.
Yeah,
I
but
do.
Dad, I think that's so beneficial if you're looking for rays on Cobia. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I understand.
Yeah. And it's absolutely, it's essential when you're sight fishing in deep water to have that tower. It makes such a huge difference in not only how far out you can see them, but how deep you can see them. And for me, it was an eye opener too, being up there and thinking that I was getting people close enough. And I'm like, God damn, why is he not making this cast?
You can't see him?
He can't see them, number one, but I can't. The distances appear shorter.
Right.
And so I think I'm getting him close enough, and I'm not.
You're still 120 feet away, and you're going cast,
Exactly. And then
and you're going what?
what? Exactly. So it was game share. And the other thing that's a really big deal with my tower is that I've got a really nice 3D side scan bottom machine
Oh, wow, yeah.
on my console down below. I just have like the basics up top. It's amazing the picture that you're getting on the new the new bottom machines
Right.
that are coming out. And so I spent a lot of time on my belly on my T-top trying to look at the bottom machine down below upside down
Oh,
or
interesting.
trying to train my clients. So
Do you guys ever use drones?
I don't. We have them. We have friends that are trying to figure out how to make them work for scouting and that kind of thing. And we have some friends that have used them to shoot some incredible video, especially of the redfish up on top. Beautiful.
I know. I love that.
You mentioned the cobia fishing has changed. How has that changed?
They are not. They seem to be passing through North Carolina really quickly. It used to be like a prolonged, maybe month-long migration, and you'd see dozens every day. You'd have the right temperature. We've had some springs where the water's been really cold, and they're tracking, maybe hugging the Gulf Stream is what we think, and going straight into the Chesapeake Bay without showing up at all in the shallow water.
So they're deeper, and then they're coming through the Chesapeake.
Yeah, they're not holding in deep. They're not subsurface deeper. They're just holding further offshore. Is what we think is happening, and they're completely bypassing us. And that's a huge springtime fishery for people. It's one of the most challenging fish we have as a guide and as an angler, as a light tackle person. Like, that's where the skill level is. That's our tarpon fishing or our permit fishing.
Yeah, I was going to say that's probably like your most prized game fish.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's appealing to me. I'd love to do that.
Exactly. And to not have it is a bummer. Really, really a bummer.
Is it a water temperature change that may inspire them to stay deeper?
And hopefully I'm getting this right, but we've had really cold inshore water temperatures. You would think with everything that's maybe going on that it would be extra warm, but it's been just really cold offshore, right on the beach, and so they're tracking with the warmer Gulf Stream water.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, and we see that. We're seeing that with some other fish too. We are seeing the warm water situation, like our bluefish. We're not seeing as many bluefish. Our flounder seem to be wanting to live more northerly with the warm water pushing north. So everything is shifting, and I feel like North Carolina is just kind of the center of all these crazy fish, shifts.
We had I would say over the last couple of years, I would say, I don't know how many years ago did I start fishing for sharks, spinner sharks in Florida, maybe 15 years ago. Right. So I was always chumming them up and trying to catch them, with the early hardy fly reels and rods, trying to break stuff.
Right.
Because you fish straight 60 to your fly line and try to catch these 90-pound spinner sharks in like 5 minutes.
It's the best product testing.
Yes,
the
best.
My God, yeah.
Because you can hook 20 a day.
Right.
Absolutely. But they were following the bait down when the water got really cold, so we used to call it like a Christmas fish. Right after Christmas, they'd show up, and then pretty soon they weren't coming down till like February.
Gotcha.
And then really late, and then pretty soon they're not even coming down. So now I've got to travel an hour and a half up to Vero Beach to find that, to get the bait and find these sharks. And so you're traveling 3 hours a day to go fishing.
Right.
So I sold my boat. I just don't do it anymore.
Right.
And it's unfortunate because we've completely lost that fishery, which was so exciting and so much fun. Right. I mean, when Nikki was really little, we would go out there and tie out a balloon and get a hook and cut a piece of Jack Crevalle and let it float out and watch the balloon go swimming away. And then eventually we got into the fly rods. An amazing fish, so underrated.
It's very underrated.
Yep.
They jump, they spin, the bites are incredible. It really teaches you how to pull on fish.
Exactly.
I mean, some of those 70, 80-pound spinner sharks, you could have on for 45 minutes when you're pulling max.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I used to break so many fly lines. That's how hard we were pulling.
Yep.
Never broke a rod. We broke all kinds of fly lines. Tell me about your offshore, passions for chasing billfish and marlin.
I just love it. It's just such a huge departure from what I do on the day-to-day. Inshore guiding, and I love that anything is possible out there. But when you see when you're kind of in that trance watching the baits back there, and then you see like a little bill, or then you see a little hop of a fin, it's just like your heart rate just goes through the roof.
Right rigger.
Exactly.
I know the screaming.
It's amazing, and it's your job when you're bill fishing on fly is pretty small as the angler. You just have to keep your shit together for about 5 seconds and then hold on. But it's the teamwork that goes into it. It's the mates just do such an amazing job with working the fish and getting them to you. But just the whole just the huge big game. That pull is incredible. The bite, maintaining your composure and not pulling the fly away from a fish so that the fish can take the fly at the proper angle to make sure it gets hooked. That's like that split second of being able to like slow down time, slow down everything, and make that happen, and then holding on and being able to listen to what the captain's telling you as far as, what side of the boat to be on to wind. But just kind of going into that, you're going into this like hyper focused, like watching everything go down to like suddenly you're running a marathon, pumping these things in,
right.
Pump and wind. You're doing wind sprints and bicep curls at the same time, and that's amazing. That's
right.
really cool. And just also, it's like when you're catching sharks and things like that, having the opportunity to max out this equipment, like max out the reels, max out the rods, max out the lines. How often do you ever get to do that? That is amazing. Right. And to know that you're right on the edge, or having a reel or a rod that's like, this is nothing. This is, I could catch a sailfish that's twice as big. This does not bother me at all, the tackle. So to have that is amazing.
Do you guys fish IGFA with your customers, or it just depends on who you have on the boat?
It's mostly IGFA. When we're bill fishing, it's always IGFA. Mm-hmm. Every other time,
not so much.
Not so much.
Yeah.
So you've caught blue marlin. Have you caught black marlin?
No black marlin, one striped, and like just gobs of sailfish. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah. But
so cool.
You go to the fads in Costa Rica, or where do you fish
yes.
for them?
So fished a lot out of Golfito, the inshore sailfish. But Brian and I got to take the trip of a lifetime about 3 or 4. I guess it's been closer to 5. About 5 years ago, got to fish the fads off of Costa Rica. We got to fish Cerveza, which is one of the better known fads, and it was a multi-day offshore trip. And it was like going to a different universe. Like when we left the dock, you might as well have been going for Mars or the moon, because it was
75 miles away.
That was the start. I think the second fad that we fished was actually 125.
Yeah, explain to somebody who might not understand a fad. Yeah,
it's a fish attracting device that has been put out by people to help keep the bait fish in an area. And most of the fish attracting devices off of places like Costa Rica are placed on seamounts, places that come up off the bottom a lot further than their surrounding and have some history of holding bait, and this just really enhances it.
So what it is, it's like a big cable,
yes,
attached to a big concrete block on the bottom of the ocean,
yes,
and that cable goes straight up to the surface.
Or close.
Or close to it, with maybe a big ball that keeps that cable straight. And there's a bunch of like big frisbees on that cable that provide shelter, shade, and bait fish go under those frisbees, if you will, that are all stacked up. I mean, I can't even imagine what that looks like if you're a diver.
And isn't that like privately, like that's not commercial? That's not the country doing that. It's individuals, right? Like normally wealthy individuals who want to
have their own fish,
fishery,
their own fads.
I might have this wrong, but I think now in some of the marinas down there, you can contribute to keeping them going. And I think they ask for money, I think is how that works now.
And that makes all the difference in the world, correct?
Oh.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You know what? And a lot of people were thinking initially they're pulling all the marlin from around the ocean to these fads,
right.
And if you're not fishing on a fad, you're going to see nothing, because everybody's over in the fish in the fish house.
So tell us about your fad trip. How many you raised?
I can't even remember how many we raised. I caught 8 blue marlin. I'm seeing numbers over there. I'm flashing numbers.
He said he raised 45.
45, yeah.
Wow.
45 in basically 2 days, and I caught 8 blues.
Oh my gosh!
In 2 days.
What's it look like when you're running in the boat over the ocean, and you see, and they'd say, okay, the fad is about 5 miles this way. What do you see as you're running towards that fad? You see birds?
You see a few birds. You definitely see a few birds, yeah. And then when you get there, you'll see some. We were seeing dimpling bait, but it's like suddenly
What's
you
dimpling
have
bait on the surface?
Yeah,
kind of like
small bait fish just making a little bit of movement on the
Right.
surface. Yeah. So and it's amazing because it's just life in the middle of nowhere, and that's getting back to why I like to fish offshore too. Is like when you're fishing the inshore, like when you're fishing the Gulf Stream, you see everything. It's not just the fish that you're seeing, the whales, the dolphins, the birds, the other fish. You know, sadly, you're seeing a lot of sharks out there now that aren't inshore, but just the life that you see out there is just so different.
Are you having a lot of problems with sharks where you fish?
Yes, we are. It's an offshore issue, like
Well.
Terrible issue. Our fleet that fishes out of Oregon Inlet and Hatteras, super well known for the yellowfin fishing, and once the sharks move in for the season, it's almost
You can't catch a fish.
Yeah, I mean, and they're for 30 bites and maybe landing just a couple of yellowfin. It's just not worth it. You're losing, and the sharks also have become trained, like Pavlov's dog out there. They understand the motors, they understand what's going on, and they'll follow until a yellowfin bites, and then it's just all over. And you know, that's how do you get a balance back? Is there a way to get that back? And but it's huge. And now this year, a couple of the bluefin tunas have been hit by sharks, which is the
bluefin tuna are up by Gloucester's, even further north,
well,
or in your area also.
In our area, like we have a late winter bluefin fishery that it's well past what happens up north. We get them like starting in late November, and we'll see them through the winter.
How big are these bluefin?
So I would say ours probably average 400 pounds, but we get the small guys too. And you'll get some bigger ones, but not the giants that you see up in Canada.
Have you tried to fly fish for them?
I have not, but I have been on the boat, and it's pretty neat.
Wow.
Pretty neat. And
so excuse me. So typically you'll chum them up, get them in a feeding frenzy, and throw the fly in there for the bluefish.
Yeah,
or the blue
for the bluefin.
Bluefin.
And the thing that's happened too with the bluefin is that it's become a trolling bite too. Like they're not chunking for yellowfin anymore. They're not chunking for bluefin. So the fly fishing opportunities for us off of coastal North Carolina have really dropped. The bill fishing on fly is still trolling, and you can do that, but not as much.
Why are they not chunking for the yellowfin and bluefin tuna?
I think it's just
sharks.
I would imagine that has something to do with it, but I think it's also just more productive. I think these guys are amazing. They figure things out, and they've just figured out a way to do it.
I would think it'd be almost at some point an ethical question for the captains, knowing that I'm going to go out there, I'm going to hook 10 fish, I'm going to feed 5 sharks.
Oh, they are not happy. They don't think that that's a good thing. They don't like it at all. And
but that's their livelihood.
It's their livelihood, and I think what a lot of them are doing now is that if it gets bad, they leave. We have some decent bottom fishing opportunities that they can take advantage of, like tile fish and
But the sharks aren't there either.
Not as bad.
Because I know in the Keys, they fish the reef there too. It's like 50% of the fish that they hook, they lose to sharks. What makes you a great fisherman?
What makes me a great fisherman?
They always say you're fishy. Sarah's fishy. What do you see that a lot of other guides don't see? And how do you think possibly differently?
I just think I have been trained to pay attention to what's going on. Like, what are the birds doing? What's the current doing? What's the temperature? What's the wind? What is little things? I think being extremely ADD and not having it diagnosed, but just like little things. It's the same thing that catches you as a hunter. You're not seeing a whole white-tailed deer. You're just seeing like a little flash of color or white or something. And I just think you dial into that and you watch it and you work it, and I think that's what makes you fishy.
You remember previous experiences.
Yeah, And I think at this point, there's I have a lot of history now, so I can play on that history.
Do you think you're more a hunter or a fisherman?
I think that.
And what do you like more?
Oh,
That's a different question. That's a different question.
I think that some of the hunting skills, I think that the patience and the observation that is so important in being a good hunter, especially a close-up hunter, is huge for fishing. Huge. And I think that probably I rely more on what I'm seeing and hearing and smelling even than some of the great equipment that I have, like the sonar and that kind of thing. And I just think that it's easy. We're always being sold on stuff, as fishermen. This is the newest lure. This is the best rod. This is this. But it still comes down to what are your spidey senses telling you?
Right.
And yes, those new things will definitely up your game. But I think that it's that paying attention is what.
Okay, so then what do you like more?
So my favorite thing that I like to tell my friends is that I fish so that I can hunt. For me, I love guiding. I love it. I hope to drop dead and still be guiding. I love my people. I love everything about it. And it challenges me. It still challenges me, and it should, or you're not doing it right.
Sure.
But I think on a personal level, hunting thrills me. Like, as you know, the first time you bugle and you have an elk respond, that will make you just.
It's unlike anything else.
Unreal.
Yeah.
And it's humbling. It makes you be part of it and be little and just be in it and not think about anything else. And it's hard not to. How can you not love that?
It was funny. I called the house and I got Brian on the phone. I said, "Is Sarah around?" He goes, "She's still out hunting, or she just got back from hunting."
Yeah.
Is Brian the hunter that you are?
He doesn't love it like I do, but he's really good. Like we just came back from several days of hunting geese, and he just throws these amazing shots out there, and everybody just goes, "What? How did you do that?" And I'm still working away at that. So he's a great shot.
So you hunt everything.
I hunt
deer and geese and ducks and elk.
Turkeys and elk
turkeys.
and whitetail. I just love it. I just love being out there. I just think it's just being immersed in Mother Nature it just flows through me. I just love it. It settles me. It just, I don't know how to describe it better than that, but it's just such a humbling treat to just have something walk that close to you, whether you have the intent to harvest it or not, just to have fooled it or have blended in enough that it's doing it.
Do you ever feel guilty about killing something?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you deal with the guilt?
Honor it and eat it. And
Very well said.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
I feel guilty, and also just completely humbled. And I know the first time I found, my first elk, when I was hunting solo, tracked him, found him, fell to my knees, and just started crying like a baby. I mean, that's just huge, huge. And you just feel really responsible too. I mean, you've maybe taken a calf away from its mother, and now it's going to
kill a cow. Yep.
So,
how do you process an elk hunting alone?
Well, I don't.
You call Brian. I got one down over here.
So I hunt with a group of bow hunters, and we drive out west, and we bring all of our own, processing tools like cutting boards, knives. We have a grinder. We have a huge chest freezer, and it all comes out with us. And so we hunt a lot by ourselves, or you can, whatever you want to do. I'd like to call with my buddy too. It's fun to tag team with him. But when you shoot something, if it's close, it's a good shot. You saw it go down, or it's a good shot. Go find it, put some light on it, maybe put a piece of clothing on it so it smells more human, and then get out of there and walk down to where they're going to meet you. And then we have everybody goes in together and we quarter it, drag it out, and process it.
We've had some pretty exciting.
I was going to say, that is so cool. You're still getting out there, do it yourself on public land.
Oh, it's everything.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I can't imagine doing it another way. Like to have somebody else take over, take control like that. It was just and it's just the whole experience is just, I cherish every bit of it. The hard part of it, the dragging it out, it's part of it.
That is so cool.
How much practice do you put in prior elk season shooting your bow?
I shoot every day all summer.
What kind of broadheads do you use?
So I used fixed, cut on contact. I use the Montauk strikers, and I don't like mechanicals. The outfitters out where we are don't like mechanicals. They're too prone to failure, and these seem to fly. They have flown really well through a series of bows and a series of different rests. Mm-hmm. They just seem to they tune very easily. I can do the tuning myself, get everything ready to go. But I haven't noticed they cut through some pretty heavy duty stuff.
And what's the poundage that you're pulling?
I pull about 50.
About 50. So how close what's the limit of you're taking a shot with an elk?
With an elk, 35 max. And it's like broadside.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Right. Good penetration.
Yep. And I've had pass-throughs. So that, I feel that's a good thing.
Yeah, no doubt.
Not always, but.
Yeah, sometimes if that broadhead gets just right, you can get between the ribs. And then you can get it all the way through.
It's amazing what can pass through an elk. Because last year I was shooting a bow that shot 45 pounds, and it went all the way through.
Isn't that amazing? Yep.
What bow were you shooting?
My recurve.
Your recurve. 2 years ago, the elk you killed.
Yeah, it went all the way through.
Mm-hmm.
That is fantastic. That is
crazy.
The accomplishment of a lifetime right there.
But I also too think that when you're shooting with a trad bow, your arrow is like 550 grains.
That's
really,
a lot
really,
of heavy.
really heavy arrow, and
the
it flies like
penetration.
this. But the hit and the penetration is like getting hit with a Mack truck.
Yeah, you're
so
right.
that's
Mike
much
Tyson.
different than a bunch of other arrows that might be much lighter.
Yeah.
They fly flat, but the penetration, the kinetic energy is not quite as high.
Okay, Tim Wells.
We were really lucky this year too. The place that I hunt, it's managed by a family, and the wife bow hunts and the husband does not. And they have had some hunters that have been hunting with their family for 50 years, and so they're really, really good bow hunters, and they've taken her under their wing, and because she doesn't have access to a lot of expertise.
Sure.
He came in this fall, and they set up he napped, or not napped, but he built a series of arrows for her of different weights, and then some different weights of broadheads, and now they're using like little add-on weights up front to kind of balance things out or change,
like inserts.
Yeah. Exactly, and they go beyond the insert even, and it was really cool to watch the two of them working together to kind of get her even more dialed in, and I just thought that was really amazing.
How heavy is your arrow with your 50-pound bow?
I'm shooting 363 grains with regular knock, and then it goes up to 372 when I put on a lighted knock, and it makes a difference in the drop when you get out to the end, like out 25 yards and beyond. I really see it's amazing what just a few extra grains makes.
Right.
And so.
And those lighted knocks can really, they're
a
so
game changer.
beneficial. They could really help you out by, if it's a questionable
Absolutely.
shot, to recover that animal.
Absolutely.
You know what? Because I hurt my shoulders, I was telling you in the lobby, and I was shooting like a 50-pound bow right after my rotator cuff. And Ryan Smalls from Aspen, a good friend of ours, said, you should probably be shooting like a trad arrow, a 550 grain, because you don't have a lot of speed.
Right.
But that arrow is going to go all the way through at 25 and 30 yards, even though you're only, pulling 50 pounds. I don't know if you ever considered or thought about that.
Yeah, And that's one thing that we were talking a lot about when the two of them were working together this fall about what would be a better arrow for me. Like, do I go heavy or do I go even lighter or
You can still be accurate. The arrow's going to have a lot more drop, but
Right.
when you shoot a lot of arrows, you're going to be very accurate.
Yeah. And you're always checking your sights anyway and adjusting your sight. So yeah. And I think and with all of that said and all the tinkering and all of the $2,000 bows now, unbelievable. It still comes down to practice.
The shot.
Practice and the shot and preparing.
Yeah, no question. Is there a fish or an animal that you haven't harvested that you'd like to?
I think it would be maybe to go sheep hunting.
Yeah.
Have you done that?
I have not. No, I wish.
I'm too old for that.
That's my
right,
dream.
Right. I think I'm right on the edge of that too. That's like the Iron Man of hunting.
It sure. What about fishing?
Well, we're actually going to go to. We're going down to Argentina this year to fish for golden dorado, and that's a bucket list fish. Bucket list fish.
That's on your bucket list, isn't it?
Yeah, I want to catch two fish. I want to catch the striped marlin in Mags Bay.
Right.
Because it's so organic. You're in a ponga, free casting.
Yeah.
And then maybe a dorado, but I want to fish a dorado, maybe in Bolivia in the little creeks up there somewhere where you can, run up and down the riverbeds. I don't want to fish dorado in a really big river where you're false casting 9,000 times.
Right.
I can't do that. But here's an interesting statement that Nicky made the other day. He was saying that a lot of his friends are thinking, well, Mags Bay, you got fish all over the place, and anybody can catch one. You just throw it right there, and they're right there, and it's going to be easy. It's almost like where's the work involved?
Right. The work is getting to Mag Bay.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But you know what? It's like catching fish out of a barrel. At some point, we all like that.
Right.
Yeah, you got to get even with them once in a while.
We do enough painful things in our life. It's like, come on.
I like a little easy now and again. Easy's good.
When I spoke, you never ask a woman how old they are, and I asked you, and you said, I'm 59 motherfucking years old.
Right. I'm still wondering how the heck that happened. Like, where does life go? Where does time go? So it's all good. I'm looking forward to it. I'm feeling like not slowing down
At all. Good
Just
for you.
take care of yourself as best you can.
Oh, he's got it covered. Because he's so tough, he's never going to get hurt. Me, I hit more trees than finish lines as a skier, so my whole body's broken, So I'm lucky that I can still do what I do.
Do you feel like you're still like everything that's on your bucket list is still totally attainable?
The bucket list changes, and that's a realistic statement with, that's something is not accessible. Like certain things, like I get tremendously seasick. I don't want to be out there in rough seas, trolling around for 5 hours to maybe see one.
Right.
Tom Evans called me one time, and we're still very close. And he used to travel the world, and he'd be in some, on the other side of the planet trying to catch a striped marlin, like off of New Zealand somewhere. And I asked him, he called me, and I said, how's it going? He said, he's so profane. He'd say like, well, we're taking it up the butt. I said, well, what's that mean, Tom? He said, well, we're in 10-foot seas. It's blowing like and it's horrible. I said, how many times are you throwing your fly? He said, we're fishing 9 hours a day, 10 hours a day, and I'm throwing my fly 1.5 times.
Right.
That is a special human being.
Right.
And it's interesting, we were talking a little bit about world record chasing. This man, Tom Evans, will go down as one of the greatest saltwater fly fishermen of all time, with all of his big tarpon records and billfish records, but he only has a handful of records. But here's a guy that chased the biggest fish that swam in the ocean. That's the record that if I ever chased one, that's the one I would want. I don't care about catching 300 or 400 world records.
Right.
And I asked you at one point, did you ever chase records in your fishing career?
A little bit. When I first moved down to North Carolina, I did it a little bit. And when they separated the women's records from the men, it was a good opportunity to put some fish on the, on the list. And it was cool and it was fun, but it lost the fun really fast. And it kind of took away from what I love about fishing. And so we both kind of looked at each other and just said,
it's not for us.
It's not for us.
I remember, Nick, you remember when you were really little and we were over in Steamboat, we were trying to catch some junior world records?
Yeah, we were like junior world record fishing. We were catching all these trout, and my dad had a boga grip, and you were weighing and then writing stuff down, and I was like, can we just fish? Why are we doing this?
Stupid.
Yeah.
Like, we're not trying to prove anything. I'm like 13 years old. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, and I think that it's good. I think it's important, and I'm glad that there are people that are out there doing it and putting in the time. And but it's not for me.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important. But yeah, I agree with you. It's not for me as well. I would love to chase a world record, if it's a real big fish in the right category. But like small fry, junior, it just didn't mean anything to me.
Yeah. What keeps you going? As far as guiding every day, do you ever get bored? Do you ever wake up and say, I just don't want to go out there today?
I've never woken up and said, I don't want to go out there. I do. Of course, you go through periods where you go through a little bit of boredom, and but you gut it out. You know it's going to change. I think I'm an optimist. I think that's what keeps me going. So, I mean, kind of lost the question there, but I've never felt like I wanted to just chuck it and give it up. I've been really frustrated. I feel like in the last few years, I've been a little more frustrated, and I don't know if that's my age. And when you're a woman, 60 means you're going through menopause. I bet you'd not heard that word on your podcast before. But it's like it changes you a little bit. And so your tolerance for shenanigans seems to dump.
Do you get cranky?
I think I get a little crankier, and I have to I'm trying to watch Brian. I'm trying not to watch his reaction. But I feel like I have to watch that because I'm like, wow, who are you? But it does not come out with clients very much. I feel it a little bit more. And I feel like what I've noticed in the last few years is my frustration maybe with the people. Probably you've heard this from everybody that you've talked to that's still guiding actively, is that COVID has changed the water. I mean, there's so many more people out there, which it's good. It means that more people are out there enjoying it, but it's made for really crowded conditions. And in our state, a lot more people are guiding. And so it's really hard to find solitude when you're out there. And
especially in Bulford when you're chasing false albacore and they're blitzing and all the boats are racing on top of these crashing fish.
Yeah. That drives me crazy. What's really funny is in our area, there's not as much running and gunning, and you get called out for it. If you're really being obnoxious, you're going to get called out for it, which is good. It keeps things to a dull roar. But what I've noticed in the last few years is that you may be moving slowly, but people are pretending like they plain old just don't see you. And so people are cutting you off, and you're like, wow,
How can you not see me?
Yeah, exactly. And that bothers me, especially when you don't have a lot of options. The fish just aren't anywhere. You've put in the miles. You've run 30, 40 miles that day, and you're not finding it. You're not seeing them on top. You're not finding them on your bottom machine, and you have to suck it up, and you have to get back into the crowds. And I don't like it personally, and I just feel like it makes it hard to run a quality trip for people. And I don't have I always look at my fishery as it's not a world-class fishery that I'm in, but it's a great fishery for people to learn and not only get their fishing skills improved, but also looking around and seeing how other people are on the water, how they're behaving. I'm seeing a lot of bad behavior, and it's frustrating, and it could be old age.
No, not old age.
I don't know.
I'd be frustrated too. So
yeah,
I don't think
and
it's
you got a right to be frustrated because you saw it when Tom Earnhardt first found it,
right?
And then it started to evolve to what it is today.
Yeah,
it's like me seeing the Roaring Fork in Aspen. I grew up fishing that river when I was 9 years old before the movie came out, and now in the summer it's just crowded with. as Dan Laren calls them,
Bank maggots.
Bank maggots.
Oh,
terrible.
man.
I know. Here's the Dan, Lauren. Here's the Dan. Okay, dangerous Dan. But anyway, yeah. So when I fish, in the summers down there in the river, I'll go out during a caddis hatch in the evening, and I wouldn't even catch a fish. I'll just throw it out there, watch the bite.
Right.
That's all I need. I don't need to put another, fish in my hand.
Right.
Do you ever think that there might be a limit to your fishery, your exposure to it, and your time on the water as a guide, that you might start pulling the plug and doing something different?
I'm starting to ask that question of myself because Brian, who is 10 years older than I am, is having to go through that. I mean, I'm hitting 60, he's hitting 70, and you have to be realistic. So, and his friends, we have a lot of friends that we guide with who are also doing that. And so the answer to that would be, I think it's going to happen naturally, but
He's shaking his head over there.
But not
happening.
It's going to happen, but I think in little increments, or maybe changing. Brian loves fishing on the head boat and having the interaction with little kids and families and things like that. So just not leaving guiding, but just maybe changing a little bit what you're doing.
Tweaking the system. I don't see you guys as golfers on a driving range and putting greens.
No. I mean, I love it, but...
Oh, you do? You play golf?
Oh, golf. Well, here's the deal. I've had a chance to hit balls and take a lesson, and I knew as soon as I hit the first ball that this was a dangerous sport for me, and that I needed to step away.
You have
get real
I tell
addicted.
you what, it's like every couple of minutes you got a shot. And I love golf. I love practicing. I love being out there and the challenge, because we're athletes. It's an instant result. You make a swing, you see the result. Right. Like when you're training, you don't necessarily see that instant result. Or when you're doing certain things like fishing, you could go fishing all day and maybe take 4 shots.
Right.
That's aggravating, or maybe not even see one.
Right.
Yeah, you're going to play 18 holes.
And you're going to at least hit the ball at least 90 times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Used to be a lot less.
If you're lucky for you.
See?
Do you guys both play? Do you play together?
Yeah, we love golf, yeah.
Oh, my God. And are you competitive with each other?
Oh, of course, but he won't bet me anymore. I
he
say,
kills
let's bet $20 or $50 or something. He won't bet more than $5.
Because
if he bets $5,
he won't give me the shots.
If he bets $5, that's a big bet for him.
For you, because you don't set the stage correctly.
Whatever.
He's like a scratch golfer, right? And he'll say, "I'll give you 2 aside."
This is awesome.
I'll give you 1 aside. Meanwhile, he'll shoot 68.
No, you're a sandbagger. You make me give you 10 strokes,
and then I'll bet you 20.
We love golf, though.
Yeah,
it's such a great sport.
Where else? What else is it that we haven't spoken about that you would like to, maybe talk about?
Oh, well, I guess one of the things that I have done, I think, in the last few years that I think is kind of maybe an offshoot of where I am in life, is in my age and also time on the water, is having seen so many changes to the water around me. Some I can understand, some I don't understand, but I want to know why. I was asked to join North Carolina Marine Fisheries Commission, which it's an unpaid governor appointed position, and we set the regulations for a lot of the fish in North Carolina. Not everything, not all the species. They're guided by other councils, but I thought, first of all, I was incredibly honored to have been asked, but I also thought it would be a way to learn about what's going on in my water. What's causing,
What are the things that you're seeing with your water?
Well, we're seeing habitat loss. We're losing a lot of SAVs. We're losing the submerged aquatic vegetation, underwater grasses. We're losing that in areas. We're seeing areas where our water just does not want to get clear anymore. Some of it's sediment. Some of it is a lot more algae than what we were used to see. We're seeing certain populations of fish just crashing really quickly. And everybody wants to blame somebody or something. But to me, and it's like, I think it's being a fly fisherman, you're always having to look at the overall picture, and for a lot of us, we can't help but think that there's so much more going on than what we see. And, what is it? What's going on here? And so that's why I joined. I thought it's going to give me access to all of the scientists in the state that are working to keep things going in our state. And also, too, it was offering, North Carolina is so diverse that what is going on in Wilmington, North Carolina, which is about 200 miles south of Nags Head, is a lot different than when it was going on in Nags Head. And you may be looking at the same fish, but their food sources, where they live, their life cycle could be completely different. And so trying to give perspective, I thought it was also important to give perspective from the northern Outer Banks. There wasn't much voice on the commission at the time from our part of the world. So I thought that would be good. I don't know, but it's I feel like it's a chance for me to kind of give back a little bit, and I've been beating up on fish and game for a long time, so it's time to give back. And also too, looking at like all of our friends down in Florida and what they've been through with the Everglades and everything that's going on down there is just, it's heartbreaking, and it happened so quickly. And a lot of the reasons for it happening are pretty clear and straightforward. But that doesn't mean that it's an easy fix. And I see a lot of those same things happening in North Carolina. And so I'd like to be, I don't know, if not part of the change, at least part of trying to understand what the next step might be. And also, trying to keep things fair across the board for all the user groups, I think. But and I grew up, I think part of my introduction to fishing is because my parents, they may not have been fishermen, but they were avid bird watchers, and we camped, and they tried to get me involved in, groups that were doing those kind of things, like nature education groups. And so I think that ethic stuck at a really, really young age. And also the people that taught me were all around sportsmen and outdoorsmen. Like, they understood what they were looking at, the trees, the birds, all of those things. And I think that just plays into wanting to be part of fixing this.
Good for you.
Yeah, good for you, Sarah.
Could be your greatest success.
I hope so, or a big heartbreak.
Yeah, well, it's, and I feel that too. I'm 71. My life has changed dramatically because of aging and time on the water, and certain things you do, you just don't want to do that anymore. Right. So now you feel like, okay, maybe I can still give back and help and be an influence of some kind here. And I think it's a moral obligation if you allow it to become that. Like, a lot of people might not feel that way, but I think somebody that's had such a big life in the outdoors, such as yourself and myself and Nikki too, it's an eventual, evolution and gradual gravitational pull to help.
Yep, for sure. And I think too, I'm the product of people that took a look at somebody and said, let's give this person a chance. I wasn't born into this. And so I feel like it is my responsibility, probably without bursting into tears, but I think Lefty put it, he's like, share your toys, share your knowledge, share your passion. And I feel like that's my way of kind of doing that too.
Lefty's voice still is loud and clear in your mind and ears.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank
that
you,
was really
guys.
fun.
Yeah,
Did you have fun?
Sarah.
I had a blast.
It was good, right?
Yes.
That wasn't so painful.
No, it wasn't.
Were you
No, it
nervous
wasn't.
coming in?
Oh, absolutely.
You
Are
were?
you kidding?
I was too.
Well, that makes me feel better. It was so good talking to you, Nikki.
Great to meet you, Sarah. You got a wonderful story, and thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Yeah. Amen.
When I saw his sad story, when I saw it's just a